You clicked on this video because you want to know how on earth I had a baby at the hospital in 7 minutes. Or you have the deep desire to have an unmedicated or low intervention hospital birth yourself. We're going to unpack all of that in this video, and I'm going to tell you exactly what I would do if I were planning another unmedicated hospital birth. Hi, my name's Marissa, and welcome to Mom to Mom. I'm a fellow mom just like you, a nurse, a doula, and a childbirth educator. Most importantly, I'm a follower of Jesus, and I believe that motherhood is an invitation to know Him more. This channel is named Mom to Mom because I want it to feel like we're chatting one mom to another. For a little bit of context, I want to share with you a little bit about my 3 births. I have had all 3 of my babies in the hospital setting. I have had 1 medicated birth and 2 unmedicated births. With my first baby, I was very unprepared, very uneducated, super naive, thinking because I want a baby, this is going to be easy. Because I'm fresh out of nursing school, this is going to be easy. I don't need to know anything else. I'm just going to go with the flow. But here's a spoiler alert for you. If you are choosing to go with the flow, you are actively making a decision to go with the flow of whoever's on call that day. And typically that means standard hospital policies and procedures. And so my plan was I'm going to get an epidural. I'm going to have a vaginal birth, and that's as far as it went. I ended up consenting to having IV narcotics. I lost my freedom of movement pretty early on with an epidural that only took on one side, and I just felt very disconnected from my body. I experienced postpartum anxiety after that baby, and when I was thinking of having another one, I didn't want that experience to cause fear or dictate my decisions on having more children. And so what I did instead was decide I want something different. And for me, different meant hiring a hospital midwife and choosing to have an unmedicated birth. I got so many questions of why on earth would you do that? You know, we have drugs for a reason, but I wanted to feel present in my own body. I wanted to feel in control. I wanted to feel all the things that I did not feel with my first baby. So I hired a midwife, I hired a doula, and I really clung to my why. And my why was that feeling of being present. And so with my second baby, I was able to have an unmedicated hospital birth. It was intense, it was beautiful, but it was what I had hoped it would be. When I found out I was pregnant with my third baby, I had a decision to make. Am I going to go unmedicated again, or am I going to have an epidural? I had experienced both at this point, and so you would think that there would be a wrestling, but there really wasn't. I knew what the payoff was going to be for an unmedicated birth. Even though I knew what I was walking into, I knew it was going to be hard. I knew it was going to be intense. I also knew I could do it, and I also knew that the reward was great. When you are choosing to give birth unmedicated in the hospital, you need to know that you are in the minority. Stats tell us that up to 70% of births that are happening in the hospital are with an epidural. And so what this means is that nurses and hospital providers are seeing 70% of vaginal births medicated. So they're seeing 30% or less physiological unmedicated births. That means they're not witnessing this very often. It's not very normal. And so that can make it even more challenging to achieve this low intervention birth that you're desiring, because you're not only fighting against hospital policies and protocols, but also cultural norms. So this is why it's even more important for you to understand the physiology of your body, be informed on potential interventions you may or may not be offered, what your options are, and how to work with your design, not against it. So I'm going to give you 7 things that I would do if I were preparing to have another unmedicated hospital birth. If you want to hear the story of how I had a 7-minute hospital birth, stick around until the end. Number 1, you have to understand your why. This decision of having an unmedicated birth is not common, and your why cannot be shallow. This has to be a really strong desire that is deeply rooted within you. This desire and this why has to be such an anchor point for you to go back to, because there are going to be times that you question yourself. Do you want to have an unmedicated birth because you want to experience that feeling of overcoming something hard? Do you want to have this because you had a negative experience with an epidural or a C-section in the past? Do you want to feel in control of your body or just experience birth the way that God designed it? You individually have to decide what is your why and how is that going to carry you through. There is no trying for an unmedicated birth. It's not, I'm just going to see how far I can get. The majority of moms that say that end up choosing an epidural. And I want you to hear me loud and clear. An epidural does not equal failure. The most important thing is that it's your decision and that you are not coerced into it or choosing it just because it's a cultural norm. There are going to be people that question you. Why on earth would you want to give birth without an epidural? Or, there's no trophy for that. There may be nurses casually come in your room and say, oh, hey, we can take the edge off. And these things can be tempting. It can be tempting when the epidural is right there. When you're giving birth at home or a birth center, it's not an option. But at the hospital, it's there. And so you've got to have that really strong why of why am I doing this? When transition hits and you wonder, can I go on any further? You have got to cling to that why. Number 2, you need to take your education seriously. It doesn't matter if you have the best hospital provider out there. The way that the system is set up, they do not have the time to properly educate you. They are seeing you in clinic for 10 to 20 minutes at most, and during your labor process, they're just popping in to check on you. You have to take the time in your pregnancy to take on that self-responsibility of I'm going to learn. I'm going to apply myself, educate myself. I'm going to be that mama bear because I care more about my baby than anybody else in the world. Not a soul on this earth is going to care more about your baby and the birth outcome that you have than you. It's important to remember that you cannot surrender to something you don't understand. The more that we understand birth, the more that we can work with that process and not against it. So you need to understand what are some interventions that you could be offered. What are the risks and benefits of those? What are some standard hospital policies that may come into play? Standard hospital procedures. It's not about memorizing all of these facts of what are the stages of labor and what are the hormones of labor. But when you understand your physiology and the flow of how your body works, this makes it easier to stack the odds in your favor to labor well and wait well for the birth of your baby. Number 3, you need to lean into your intuition. And if you're a believer, this is the Holy Spirit. The more that you use this intuition muscle in your pregnancy, the more you're going to strengthen it before you enter into full-fledged motherhood. This is going to serve you well. There are going to be so many times in your journey as a mother where you have to lean on your intuition, where you know better than somebody else that is trying to parent or speak into your child's life. And so the more you use it, the stronger it will become. If you come across a situation in your pregnancy where somebody's giving you advice that just does not set right, there's a reason for that, and you need to pursue the reason. Number 4, this one is very important for the hospital. You need to labor at home as long as possible. Now, I need to add the caveat, as long as your intuition says that you're safe and there's nothing happening that tells you baby is in any kind of danger, right? You need to stay at home as long as possible. And there's a few reasons for this. Number 1, you're in the comfort of your own environment. You are just going to be able to be more comfortable, get that oxytocin flowing, and be able to cope with your contractions better in the comfort of your own home. Another reason is because you can still move around, you can still eat, you can still rest, do all of those things that you need to fuel your body to get through labor. This advice comes straight from my personal midwife has told me, if you want an unmedicated birth, your best shot is to labor at home as long as possible. Here's the thing that I think many women discount. You don't need someone to confirm that you are in labor. Your contractions are going to continue to get closer together and more intense, and you will know that you're in labor. It's not so much about the timing of how long do the contractions last, how far apart are they. That information definitely can be helpful. It's more about intensity. So just lean into that, listen to your body, and listen to your intuition. Number 5, pray specific prayers. I think the Lord loves it when we pray boldly. Give yourself permission to approach his throne with boldness and pray for things, specific things that you are wanting in this birth. For example, going into labor in the morning, laboring while your other kids are asleep, having your water break on its own at the very end of labor. These are things that we can pray for, and it might seem silly, but we can pray for them with boldness while still acknowledging God's sovereignty over the experience of God. This is what I'm desiring. This is what I'm asking for. But ultimately, I'm submitting to your will and what you have for me. In Matthew 7:7-8, it says, "Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives, and the one who seeks finds, and to the one who knocks it will be opened." God is not a magic genie. He's not going to grant every single wish that you want, right? But he does care. He cares very deeply about the little things. So don't discount that. Be constant in your prayer life and don't be afraid to pray boldly. Number 6, never stop learning or advocating. I mentioned this earlier, but there should not be a single prenatal appointment that you attend where you are not asking questions. It is so important to understand every single thing that you're consenting to. There should be no test, no ultrasound, no intervention done with you or to you without you understanding what you are agreeing to. I think sometimes asking questions or wanting to learn about interventions can come across as aggression or I'm not being a good patient. But birth is not the time to worry about people pleasing. This is an experience that you're going to remember for the rest of your life. This is your body, your baby. So if someone is offended, if a provider is offended by your questions, maybe it's time to find another provider. And number 7, you need to work with the physiology of your body. Your body was so intentionally and intricately designed. And when you work with the physiology of your body, not against it, you are only stacking the odds in your favor for labor to unfold the way that it was designed to. When you are working with the hormones of your body, for example, you need oxytocin, which is your love hormone. That is the hormone that encourages uterine contractions. And so you're putting yourself in an environment that makes you feel safe and loved. You're spending time with your partner because that makes you feel safe and loved, and that encourages more release of oxytocin. These are ways that you can work with your body, maintaining your freedom of movement as long as possible so that you can use gravity to your advantage to help baby navigate the pelvis. There are so many examples of how you can work with your body in order to have a hopefully less complicated labor and birth. So I promised you the story of how my third birth happened at the hospital in 7 minutes. I was 39 weeks and 4 days pregnant, and I woke up at 4:30 in the morning to a contraction. I knew immediately this is the real thing. After you've had a couple babies, you're able to decipher what is a true labor contraction and what is not. I laid there for a few more minutes through a few more contractions, and I went ahead and got up because I knew that this was the day. I went to the kitchen and I labored in the dark for a few minutes. I had a big bowl of oatmeal because I was fueling myself for the day ahead. Now, I want to say my first and second labors were 10 to 12 hours long. So having a fast labor was not at all on my radar. I labored for about 30 minutes alone before I woke up my husband, thinking I was being a good wife to let him have his morning coffee and have time before we had to go to the hospital. Little did I know, as soon as I woke him up, I would feel the urge to go to the bathroom, which is not uncommon when you're in labor. Your bowels tend to empty. I went to the bathroom, I sat down on the toilet, and my water broke. And this was at 5:30 a.m., so exactly 1 hour after my first contraction. It was in that moment that I realized things were moving a lot faster than I had anticipated, because historically, with my other babies, when my water has broken, things happen very quickly. I immediately contacted my mom to come be with my other babies and my midwife. We got in the car at exactly 6 a.m. and headed to the hospital. The nearest hospital that has maternity care where we live is 45 minutes away. So we got in the car at 6 o'clock and we booked it. I had my husband call labor and delivery on the way to give them a heads up that we were coming. I was in contact with my midwife. She knew we were coming. We met her at the ER entrance after I had gone through transition in the car. We were a couple exits away from the hospital. I started to get sweaty, started to feel a little bit dizzy, started to feel a lot of pressure, and I knew that I was going through transition because, again, I had had an unmedicated birth of my second, so I knew what that felt like. I took off my pants in between contractions because I was just not sure we were going to make it. We pulled into the ER entrance, and I met my midwife at the door in between contractions. She rolled me up to the second floor where the nurses were ready and waiting. I got out of the wheelchair onto the bed on my hands and knees, and she said, "The baby's head is right there. If you feel like pushing, go for it." So I pushed for a couple minutes, and my baby girl was born. We arrived at the hospital at 6:30, and she was born at 6:37. My very first contraction was only 2 hours and 7 minutes before that. So it was the most wild experience. Very intense, very fast, but so incredible. It was so beautiful. I could not have asked for a better experience. I had no fetal monitoring. I had no IVs. I didn't have to battle any kind of hospital policies or things that could potentially alter the way a low intervention birth goes. And I know what you might be thinking. You might be thinking, okay, well, yeah, I mean, you weren't there for very long, so of course you had a smooth, unmedicated birth. But you have to remember that I spent the last 8 months prior preparing for this. And I have also had an unmedicated birth in the hospital setting where I was there for over 8 hours prior to the baby being born. But I want to tell you, there's nothing special about me. If I can do this, you can do this. If you have a deep-rooted desire to have an unmedicated birth, don't let anybody convince you otherwise. It's not that having an unmedicated birth is better than anyone else. There's always a why, and that's individual to you, and only you can know what that is. So if that's something you want, I believe in you. You can do it. I encourage you to take these 7 things that we've talked about today and put them into practice. If you want to be prepared and confident going into your unmedicated or low intervention hospital birth, my birth course, Delivered by Grace, will teach you exactly how to do that through the lens of the gospel. I have 2 different offers. One includes comprehensive birth education through Unmedicated Academy. This is over 30 hours of education, plus my 6 video series of preparing for birth through the lens of the gospel. This is where we're looking at topics like endurance and worship, patience and waiting, the design of your body, surrender, and God's sovereignty. If you purchase the Unmedicated Academy curriculum through my link, you will also get that 6 video series. If you've had a baby before or you don't feel like you need the comprehensive course, but you are interested in the faith-based stuff, I also have a link in the description that has the purchase link for just that 6 video series. I hope that you have found this video helpful, and I hope that you'll stick around if you want to learn more about how the gospel can be applied to birth, and I will catch you next time.